So welcome to the America 2.0 series by SC. I'm your host, Adam Morgan. Here we're focused on interviewing community and technology leaders about life and leadership going forward. The world changed in 2020, and we want to highlight and celebrate strong leadership in our short form web series here. I'm pleased to be joined today by U.S. Senator for North Carolina, Thom Tillis. Thom was elected to represent North Carolina in 2014. He's a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Veteran Affairs Committee, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, and Judiciary Committee. Before serving in the Senate, he was Speaker of the House in North Carolina's General Assembly, where he played an instrumental role in enacting job-creating policies and reforming North America's tax and regulatory codes. And finally, and perhaps selfishly, I'm pleased to count Thom as a multi-decade a friend and former boss of mine. So thanks for joining us, Thom.
Happy to be here.
First, I'd love to find out from you, in light of the pandemic, a global crisis, quarantine, how have you changed as a person, as a spouse, as a parent, as a grandparent now?
You know, I've got a daughter who's a nurse who's expecting my second grandchild. So I view this COVID response through several different lenses: a father, a grandfather, a member of the U.S. Senate. And I think that it really, there are times when I hear my daughter's got to go do a shift at the hospital she works at, and Charlotte, the father in me, wants her not to do it, but the senator in me is very proud of the fact that she is doing it. I think that the main thing that we have to do in a crisis, though, is you never forget your ideology. But right now, so much of what we're dealing with is based on a crisis response where you kind of check your red jersey or your blue jersey at the door and do what you have to do to solve the problem. We're in crisis mode, Adam. This is something I dealt with back in my days at Price Waterhouse. The crisis was a slip project date or something, but now lives are on the line. And so we have to be very fluid. We have to be able to make decisions, change it based on the best available information, and really manage in the uncertain environment we find ourselves in.
Have you changed as a leader professionally in light of this?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm going back to the playbook that I learned very well when I was at Price Waterhouse, when I was at IBM. It's be driven by facts, check your emotions at the door, and use the sorts of things. I feel very blessed to have been in the environment that I was in, because a lot of the skills that I was taught to manage staff, to manage projects, are the kinds of skills that I'm using. I just got off of a video conference I do with my staff every day, and I run my staff like I used to run my practices at Price Waterhouse and IBM. Fact-driven, understand prioritization is important, get the most out of your resources. Those sorts of things are things that I'm just putting to use in an environment where our physical health and our economic health is being threatened. So I'm glad to have that experience going into this process.
Are there personal values that you've been able to kind of fall back on and rely on that you think help you weather a time like this?
Yeah, I believe in leading by example. And so I've not asked anybody to do anything that I'm not doing myself. The day that the COVID task force recommended wearing a mask, I put on a mask. The first time I wore it, it felt uncomfortable or different, but I can't get on. I'm doing teletown halls. I did my 27th telephone town hall today. We've approached and we've had conversations with over 300,000 people. I've answered some 300 questions on the call, and I'm trying to lead by example, do what I'm asking others to do. And I think that that's what every elected official must do. The last thing I want to do is see an elected official who is responsible for imposing a stay-at-home order or a wear a facial mask order out in public and not with a mask on.
It's a great point, and completely agreed and appreciated. Are there changes that you think will become permanent as a result of this?
I think our culture about responses to any sort of epidemics or pandemics or even seasonal flu is going to be very different. I think that some of the things that we're learning to control the spread of COVID can be applied to a better public health posture going forward. Now, look, I want to get back to stadiums being full, even though the Panthers drafted all defensive players this year and they're going through a big crisis. I'm looking forward to going back to Bank of America Stadium. I'm looking forward to mass gatherings. But I think we are going to learn from this. We've learned a lot in terms of our reliance on global supply chains. I think that is going to change. I believe that you're going to see more of a culture of distancing when it makes sense. Those are the sorts of things we can learn from this response to the virus, and potentially produce a healthier America on an ongoing basis, not only in response to COVID, but to any of the seasonal flus or any of the other viruses or illnesses that may be highly contagious.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that was spot on. And just to wrap, and for our last question, I can't think of anybody more qualified to answer this question than you, which is, the response for governments globally to this is unprecedented, right? We've never seen anything like it, certainly not in my lifetime. What would you like to see be done going forward so that we're more prepared next time?
Well, number one, I think that the private sector is going to take a look at their reliance on China and offshore manufacturing in a very different way. If you take a look at the fully burdened cost of our response to COVID and the cost of having to reformulate supply chains because of our reliance on China, there are going to be a lot of decisions made, I think, in boardrooms to figure out how to diversify outside of China. Some of the portfolio probably coming back to the United States, some of it going to other friendly jurisdictions. We've even heard Japan starting to rethink what their industrial sector, their industrial base should look like going forward. I think that we're going to have to take a look at biotech, pharmaceuticals, medical device manufacturing, and look at it in a very different way. I do believe there are various silver linings in what we're going through now. One of them will be, I think, great opportunities for states like North Carolina to emerge a manufacturing sector that is here, but not at the scale that it could be when we start taking into account more resiliency, more industrial base here to respond to the virus. I think all of those are very important decisions, and decisions that are going to be made that will benefit the United States and the other countries. The other thing that we have to work on is having China be held accountable for the lack of responsiveness early into this process. We've got to create a new standard for cooperation. When you have something sourced out of your country that has the impact that COVID-19 has, we've got to have a higher expectation, and the world organizations, including the World Health Organization, who are tasked with trying to avoid these sorts of pandemics, needs to be held accountable. They're an important organization, but they're going to have to step up their game. Those are all the things that we'll be dealing with when I get back to the Senate beginning next week, actually.
That's tremendous and really insightful. I appreciate that. There's a litany of questions I'd love to ask you beyond that, but I know we've got to hold to our short form podcast or cast here, and you've got a tremendously busy schedule. So it means the world to me that you could carve out some minutes to spend with us today and talk through this. And thank you very much for your time. Good luck to you, and best to Susan and the family as well.
You too. It was great seeing you.
Thom, thank you so much.
You too.